So, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is Two Marine Dads, episode six.
Dicks.
Six. Episode six. Gonna take it a little easy today and talk about something fun. Nothing, hopefully, too cantankerous, but John and I will probably poke somebody wrong the way we work. But I'm Tyler. This is John. If you guys don't know, if you guys are watching for the first time, we do this every week. Sundays, and then try to get them up by Monday for you all to watch and enjoy. We will be on a full list of podcast places, so you don't have to watch it on YouTube. Looking down below in the description, I'll have the links down there for you to take a peek at. Otherwise, I guess we'll get rolling. So today, John and I, we're going to talk about SN8, or, SpaceX in general, the spaceship that prototype that SpaceX is currently working on, because I super geek out on that stuff. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm a bit of a nerd too when it comes to that stuff. Taking rockets out of space sounds cool.
So for those that don't know or who aren't into the mix of it, last week, I keep wanting to say Star Trek or Stargate or something. SpaceX launched Starship prototype SN8, which stands for serial number 8. It was the first one to have a nose cone on and to do more than just a short, 150, I think 150 meter was the highest they went before. Yeah. Little hop to test, right? And all those others only had one Raptor engine. This thing had 3 Raptor engines on it. Went all the way to 12.5 kilometers, which is roughly 41,000 feet in freedom units. And then did a belly flop like a fat kid at summer camp and fell to the earth. Very controlled and amazed. First time a maneuver like this has ever been performed with a aircraft, spacecraft, flying lawn dart, whatever you want to call a thing. First time it's ever been done. Okay. And it worked magnificently. Not only did the thing maintain control, it steered the Starship to pinpoint accuracy over its landing spot. They performed the transition to flip back to vertical, fired the Raptors, and unfortunately, they had an unforeseen issue with the whole reason this is a prototype and testing, had a pressure issue with the fuel, which means the engines didn't produce enough thrust, along with a couple other issues that they're still sorting through. But as Elon Musk put it, it landed hard and had a what they call a RUD, an RUD, which is a rapid unscheduled disassembly. Or in other words, it blew up into a giant fucking fireball.
It did. When you see it hit, you can actually see the shockwave travel through it. If you're paying close enough attention to it, it's pretty cool. It's just a little too hard.
The cool thing is, though, and I was talking about this with some guys beforehand, is I was thinking that this, something like this is the best thing that could happen to SpaceX. Obviously, it would have been awesome if it had landed properly and hadn't destroyed itself, because then it wouldn't have destroyed itself. But it's kind of the thing that John and I have talked about in the past with failure, right? You learn from failure. You get better with failure. So if everything had gone perfectly, they might have learned a little bit, but they learned even more now. They learned one thing that can go wrong, and they can fix it before they get into an even more advanced prototype, which they're already working on. They've got up to 12 of these things. They're up to I think they're up to SN16 or something in pre-production. Yeah. SN9 is manufactured already.
It's already done. Yeah. It's built.
So now they can do this quick iteration on these things, and they learned from the mistake. And the fact that thing blew up in a giant fireball means that they're going to get a shitload of hype from this. People are going to pay so much. I mean, you guys know how it works in the everything else. The more scuffed something gets, the more people pay attention to it. If it works perfectly, it's they land rocket ships on the middle of barges in the ocean, and everybody's like, yeah, whatever. It went fine. Of course, when one crashes, everybody's like, oh, look, it crashed. So I think this is good for SpaceX as a whole. And to touch on more, what we've talked about here on the podcast with leadership, Musk's leadership example that he had with what happened here, that thing cratered in the ground. And I think within 10 minutes, he tweeted, "We're going to Mars, baby," or something like that. Congratulations, SpaceX. Fantastic test flight. Everybody did fucking amazing. Thanks for all their hard work. It wasn't, "You idiots, we lost a rocket." It was, nobody knows exactly, but rumor is that thing cost like $200 million.
Wow. Yeah. And I remember you and I kind of talked about that. We're like, do you think he's scratching his head going, man, there's $200 million there? Or is he like, hey, we got the data, and that was the extent of his text. He was like, hey, great job. We collected the data we wanted. And I guess he already knows he can land it vertically. He's already figured that out. What he wants is how this thing descended on its belly, and will those little wings pop out, and will it be stable, and will it right itself, and all that. Like, and it did everything it was supposed to do. It lost one engine and hit hard, you know. So it was like it was. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, it's gonna land. It's gonna land.
Dude, I'm sitting there, dude, and I'm like, oh my god. Dude, I'm not even lying, dude. I get so excited over watch. I had the Jess and the girls up here. We were watching it as it was happening, and dude, I was almost in tears. I was in so much excitement watching this because of what it means for what this means for mankind and space flight, which kind of combined together. Sorry about that. Bump the mic. That combined effect of what that's going to do to the future of what we get to see. I mean, this is like the people that watch the Wright. I don't even know if they had anybody watching them, but like when the Wright brothers first flew, like this, we just watched live Wright brothers first powered flight, and not the one where they went like 12 feet, the one where they went like 160 feet. But
and then brought it back. The guy's running next to the plane,
right? Stiff headwind.
No, it was pretty cool. In 100 years, we've gone from that to this, and now I'm with you. I think it really opens up a lot of doors, and you and I kind of touched on it last week a little bit when we said, hey, it's not about this time. It's not about guns and weapons and Russia and flags and what the United States can do, although it is happening in the United States, which is completely awesome. Point of fact, it's not happening in China or any of these other crazy countries.
More importantly, dude, SpaceX only hires Americans, and that's a topic. That's a topic for another podcast. But he'll only hire Americans.
Good, and he's an immigrant. You gotta love that. So I mean, he came here and just took the opportunity and ran with it. But I mean, so you got this opportunity to do something with it. You got a private enterprise teamed up with the U.S. government. Okay, I'll give you that. But it's about people. It's not about it's about research. It's about whatever. He's got like a singular, thing in mind. I want to go to Mars. Right. And he blew up a rocket. He's still going to Mars. And you and I talked about other. They've been doing this for a while now. I guess from like back in the 90s they started doing that.
Well, let me look here. How long did it take before they landed a Falcon?
But like, the difference between a private enterprise and the government is just gigantic. I mean, you have so much bureaucracy associated, and then lobbyists and all the rest of it that gets associated with when you say the word NASA, or when big companies that are in bed with them. I was talking to one of my buddies. He actually worked at NASA for a long time, and he sent me a couple clips. His dad is like a no shit rocket scientist, dude. Dude had a cool upbringing. And, we should get him on the podcast one day. I'll call him after this and see if he's interested. But yeah, he worked there. He worked for another construction company building, their launch pad and like the rover, not the rover, what do they call it? The mobile launch pad, the one with the big tracks on it there, like 15 feet high.
Yeah, the one that carried the shuttle out, right?
Yeah, huge thing. So he was in charge of building all that kind of stuff, and
I guess Saturn V got carried out on it too.
Yeah, Saturn V. Yeah. So he was telling me, and if I got it wrong, dude, you can call me up and correct me. But yeah, he was telling me, he sent me the DCX, which was like from the 1990s.
Yeah, McDonnell Douglas's take on what's called, it's a STO or SSTO, single stage to orbit, which means there's no rockets, so just up and down.
So like the guys who figured
no stages.
Yeah, up down. And their goal was to have a quote off shelf like parts you can buy with pieces that are like literally on shelf. You manufacture them here, they're here, and lightweight, and then it landed vertically just like this one does, But where it got murky was when you I guess it's the 90s, so you're talking Russia's still around, that kind of stuff. We're still doing, NASA's a huge powerhouse, still is, but even more so back then. And they were in bed with another. So these guys built this thing, figured it out, made it work, built a one third, size prototype, and we're flying it all around, and the national news caught it. So now NASA feels compelled, begrudgingly compelled to do this thing. And it was lackluster. They just didn't have the, the drive to do it, partly because they were in bed with Lockheed Martin doing something else, I forget what they called it, the Venture or something. I have to look it up. Yeah, they call it the X-33 Venture Star. So that's what they were building. So they didn't really want to do this other program. So it kind of, fell to the weight, kind of fell to the wayside. So now you have somebody like Elon.
Oh yeah, dude, this thing is. They still talk about this thing too.
But it was like plagued with problems, and then NASA was like this huge, just bureaucracy of paperwork and files and blah blah blah. And my buddy even tells me that he's like it was hard working there because of that. But so now you have this one guy who's just like, nope, we're doing this, and there's none of that extraneous nonsense. It's like, nope,
God, that's crazy.
Develop the technology and keep going. It works.
What are we talking with the McDonnell Douglas one? Like you were saying, was the 70s and 80s, right? That's what time frame you're talking about. Guess when guess when the X-33 got canceled finally. Like this is how long it took the bureaucracy to say no, we're canceling this.
90s.
February 2001.
Really?
That's what program was canceled. The main reason reported as being delay.
But you can't imagine why, because you have a report about the cover sheet of the report. I mean, we've worked on projects like that. But yeah, like I think that is the biggest difference here is that Elon really, he's not shooting for the moon, he's shooting for Mars, and that's his goal.
And it's a singular goal. So everybody's like, well, what do you mean? Falcon 9's launching, stuff to the space station. It's taking astronauts there now since the first time since we got rid of the space shuttle, and especially because the SLS system's so delayed. The United States had we were paying Russia's $70,000 an astronaut, I think, to send fucking people to space. And right now, the fucking Falcon 9 costs less than that to launch. The whole thing, not 70,000 an astronaut. The whole fucking thing is like I don't know if we actually know what it is, but I know it's less than 70. But they're doing Starlink now, which is amazing. There's some people here in Montana that actually have Starlink, the remote internet, out in the middle of nowhere, and they're getting like 200 megabyte downloads with 40 ping in the middle of nowhere, satellite internet.
That's
now
awesome.
It's still kind of hitchy, like it'll disconnect for a couple of seconds on you, like so it doesn't work good for like what we're doing here, video conference, or you can't like play video games really with it or anything. But that's just because there's not enough satellites yet. They've got like 700 some odd satellites up, and they want 14,000. And that's another program of Elon Musk, right? All of these plans are together. The whole goal of this is to generate revenue for the Starship program to get people to Mars. That's it, period. He's not doing it to get rich. He's not doing it any other reason than to create revenue to build Starship and get it to Mars, which if he's going to crash a half dozen of these things at $200 million a pop, he's going to need quite a bit of money.
We're going to need another ISS for him to go ahead and, supply.
Oh shit. I mean, ISS is a small, they're flying, what's the X-47? I think that mini space shuttle that the Air Force uses, it's super top secret. It's the X-47, I believe. If I got that right on the first, nope, it's not. X-47 is the stealth drone. Secret space plane. That'll come up. X-37, I was 10 off. X-37. So this little space shuttle guy, it's like a miniature space shuttle, but the Air Force uses it. It goes up into space for like a year and a half or 2 years, and it's a drone, comes back and lands by itself. And SpaceX has launched a few of those. They have a couple secret missions they do for the U.S. government. I'm sure spy satellites and communication satellites and shit, but we don't know what they are. But that's why Elon Musk. That's what got him in trouble when he was smoking pot on Joe Rogan, because that's the only reason. Because he's got a security clearance, right? And anybody who's gone through a security clearance, it asks about drugs.
He's like, I have to hit it. I'll take a hit of that, But yeah,
so they're super busy. They're super busy with all sorts of other things, paying for this. And it's all for Starship. This was the goal. So Falcon Heavy, and it's funny. So Falcon Heavy was a huge deal, and it's successful. They've done 2 launches with it. They launched the car, and then they did another launch a little while ago. But they've pretty much given up on any iteration of Falcon Heavy. Like it's there, but there's not a lot of missions for it because the BFR is Starship. BFR has changed into Starship. That's what it was originally called.
Oh yeah. Big Falcon Rocket,
right? Yeah, that was the PG name they came up with. If anybody played video games, the BFG, they know exactly what BFR stood for, and it ain't Falcon.
It's not Falcon. But that was pretty funny though. Yeah, leave it to Elon.
So BFR was the original concept for Starship. That's what it was. But through iteration and process of realizing they need something different, Starship was born, and that's what they named it, right? Falcon Heavy is the name of the big one. It's got 3 boosters, 3 Falcon rockets on it with the and it has missions, just not very many. It's been proven, the concept's there, it works if a buyer comes up for it. But they've basically, I don't want to say they haven't given up on Big Falcon, the Big Falcon rocket, the Falcon Heavy. They're just not pushing it. They're not looking for missions for it because Starship's going to replace anything that would do, and do it cheaper and do it better because it's even going to be bigger than the Falcon Heavy. So that's what's amazing to me about SpaceX. And part of me wants to go work at SpaceX. Like I think I could get a job because Elon Musk doesn't really care about what your degree is. He cares about how hard you work. And I think part of it would be super fucking cool to be involved in SpaceX and be part of this next leap for mankind. But I'm going to take I've worked the 60, 70, 80 hour weeks. I'm done with that for a little while. I don't need to go back right into it because from what sounds like, that's exactly what SpaceX is you're just fucking, which is awesome. And if people are volunteering for it and getting paid well for it, good on them because I don't want to say, I mean, in an older day and age, you'd say these people are doing God's work. In this day and age, you're doing humanity's work. These people, it doesn't matter. It's super United States. Yeah, fuck yeah, pro United States, man, that we're doing this, and it's not the fucking communists doing it to spread communism all over the world. But it's the United States doing this in a free market system with capitalistic principles, being successful, and is going to potentially save humanity. And I don't say that lightly. Right. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about that. But the idea that, Elon Musk is super scared about AI. I'm not too worried about AI. I think everybody's overhyped AI and what its capabilities are, and what it could eventually become. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but the bigger thing is like asteroids or nuclear war or holy fuck, COVID-19. I mean, you got a plague that isn't really all that deadly. I'm not saying it's not dangerous, but it's not like Ebola deadly, right? Could you imagine if something like COVID-19 that's Ebola deadly hit the planet?
Oh God, yeah, it'd eliminate, everything would stop.
And that's where Musk's thing is about getting interplanetary. It's not just Mars. So you got the moon is kind of like going to visit your neighbor's house, right? We're still trying to figure out. I guess no. Let's put it like this. It's like the Romans trying to figure out how to. It's like the Romans trying to figure out how to get across the English Channel, right? That's what they're doing right now. That's what stage we're at. Is the guys that still use stone roads pretty good at it, but didn't quite figure out the square sail yet, trying to get across the English Channel. They got there. A bunch of people probably died, but the Vikings did it better, right? So going to Mars is like Christopher Columbus getting to the United States, crossing the Pacific. Or maybe Magellan circumnavigating the globe. Whatever you want to talk about it. That's where we're at now, is just trying to get that part. After
colonizing the entire.
But after Mars, now you have the asteroid belt that's just beyond Mars, and there's a name for it, but I can't remember what it's called. It's not the Kuiper belt because that one's way out. But you got that asteroid belt that's full of resources, and then you have moons. The moons of Saturn are hugely interesting to science because you have Titan, and then you have what's the ice planet? There's one that's an ice planet, ice moon. Yeah, but they think it might have liquid ocean underneath, liquid water. Underneath. The only other place in the solar system that might have liquid water, which liquid water might mean life.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know if I want to be the first one to find. Oh yeah, Europa. That's it. Thanks, Spooked. So, for those, this is the first time John and I are doing this live. We're doing this on Twitch, which is my gaming thing. We'll look at transitioning into more live broadcasts later. So you might see us interact with chat a little bit, and that's what it is. One of the guys keyed in here for me, Spooked, and said Europa. That's the name of the ice planet or ice moon on Saturn, or Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn. Yeah, that's badass, man. So the science that's available once we start getting out and out of space, and starting to build space stations and hubs for people to go and visit, and bases on the moon, and eventually cities on the moon. You look at shows like Expanse, which I fucking love. The Expanse.
Yeah,
that instead of just being crazy sci-fi, it's getting to the point where that is imaginable now. And the only way it's there is through people like Elon Musk and all the team he is structured at SpaceX doing what they do. And I don't know if you've ever watched, but like when there's big moments or little moments, it doesn't matter, dude. Whenever there's a launch of the Falcon 9, you've got this whole group of people at SpaceX in the launch control, not like in launch control, but kind of by it, watching all this go down. Like the Falcon Heavy was one of the most epic ones because nobody knew if it was going to work. Nobody had any idea, and it worked perfectly. These guys were cheering. I mean, you could tell it wasn't just guys getting paid and making good money, and they're just here to make the money. These people had their heart and souls dumped into this program, and
yeah,
it's amazing. It's so inspirational to see it. It reminds me of being a kid again, and like going to the space centers and visiting all the shit. And, I feel like there was a good maybe 10 or 20 years a stretch where space was just this thing. Nobody cared about it. Nobody was inspired by it. And then you had the space shuttle blow up over Texas, the reentry, and kill everybody. And
what, 03, 02, something like that? Yeah.
It had to. I was in the Marine Corps when it happened. So I think, in fact, I think I might have even been in Texas.
So was I.
Yeah. I think I was actually I was in San Antonio, I think, when it happened. But needless to say, there was only negative marks for space, right? There was nothing crazy cool. And in that period of time, that's when SpaceX was started in the 90s. Like, I'd have to go look and see exactly when SpaceX was started.
But yeah, like that's, you get to like what, 08?
2002, sorry. He started in 2002. So
but you get to like 09?
The year after 9/11, and they didn't launch their first successful mission until, what was it? It was like 2012 or 2010, wasn't it? Anyway, it was a long time.
Yeah,
they had 8 years of doing nothing but crashing ships in Texas, and now they're the go-to. Everybody, SpaceX is the team to beat, right? They're the only ones that has a recoverable launch system that is functioning at 100% capacity. You've got Blue Origin and some of these other places, and like Virgin Atlantic is just a tourist thing. It's just a gimmick. Great on them for the technology. I'm not trying to downplay what they've worked on and what they've built, because it's amazing, but it's not meant to do anything industrious. It's just meant to take rich people to space so they can experience a couple minutes of weightlessness, which isn't really weightlessness. You're just free falling for a lot longer than you are.
But that's when it started. That was like there was like $1 billion prize or something like this, or half.
That was one of them.
Prize.
That was one of them.
And when they went up, and I remember he had like M&Ms or Skittles or something in his flight suit, and he tossed them up so the camera could see, these candies floating in space or whatever, and they were crushable. So if they got into the flight controls when he was flying this thing back down, you could crush them, But yeah, that whatever the name. I was just trying to look it up, whatever that is. But yeah, that was like when they first clinched it, and they were like, okay, he literally hit the ball into orbit. Like he flew up 65 miles or whatever it was, floated for I don't know a minute and a half, and then had a controlled descent. But it was this weird. Looked like kind of like an airplane thing where these wings popped out, and again, same kind of concept where he landed, vertical.
Flew off another aircraft, and it flew off another aircraft, and this is
they got it going.
It's cool to watch something because the immediate step is going to be the payload you can get into low Earth orbit with this thing. It's massive. The amount of cargo this thing is going to be able to get into space is insane. But the bigger piece is going to be you're going to finally start to be able to build that stepping stone to get to like the asteroid belt. Because I mean, in my mind, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a gas station, a substation, a space station kind of docking point that you're going to have people living long-term in space, not just for research, but for commercial purposes, hotels. I guarantee you the first hotel is going to be a fucking casino in space, and they're going to have some fucking crazy gambling that's done in 0G, whatever, or the NFL is going to have 0G football, or, whatever it is, or low G football, but the next companies after that are either going to be looking to mine resources on the moon, which there's the availability of some pretty rare resources on Earth that are really easily accessible on the moon. Helium, I think it's helium-3. Pretty sure it's one of the rare isotopes of helium. But also moving to the asteroid belt and pulling resources from the asteroid belt. And like,
just think Earth defense. If there's an asteroid that's headed our way,
well,
there's
not,
already
yeah,
people
that
up there
too.
that can intercept and move it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're gonna have what's his name? Not Tom Hanks. Bruce Willis will obviously be living on the space station.
Of course. When he's someone real.
But they get the you get one of these asteroids, and I just hope I'm still alive the day that happens. That you don't have a space station in space. You don't have the moon in space. Somebody brings a 5 mile meteorite from the asteroid belt. Not a meteorite, an asteroid. A 5 mile wide asteroid that's just in space, and it's like this mini moon that's going around. It just orbits, right? They bring it back safely. They put it into Earth orbit, maybe high Earth orbit, maybe not geosynchronous orbit. Maybe we do something really dickhead and like make a permanent shadow over Beijing or Moscow. You put it permanent orbit so that every day the shadow goes right over the top of the city, kind of thing. Just to say, with a giant fucking American flag painted on the front of it, but.
They look at it. That's how they see
a flag flying across the sky. I mean, jokes aside, though, and it's got bases built into it that are doing nothing but mining resources. And instead of doing strip mines on planet Earth to recover rare earth metals, they're pulling hydrogen and oxygen and maybe even ice. You making rocket fuel in space, so we don't have to launch it into space anymore. But now you're sending little fucking pods back to space. Every day they just fucking you pick a place in the middle of Nevada or something, and this thing just fucking parachutes down, and guys go out and boom, there's pure fucking platinum ore, or pure rare earth metals or whatever it may be.
That's legit. I mean, like, they talk about men talk with what is it they call it? Boys talk tactics and men talk logistics, and that's exactly what you're saying. Like the logistics will be in play to do this. And you have, like, even in the 90s, they were refueling that one that they didn't pursue, in 3 days. And it was back up and running, ready to go again. So you think about if you got good at that, this thing could come down, get inspected, replace any burned parts or whatever, get refueled, and pop back up into orbit like the next day, the next time it goes around or whatever, if the weather conditions are right, and that's legit. And if we think, think about this, like the biggest thing, if you were to think in terms of economics, and you think of someplace that's isolated, like Mars or whatever, but you think economics like someplace like North Korea or in some of these Middle Eastern countries, and you think about the sucking sound of resources that it would take and the amount of money that could be made, economically, what that would do just here on Earth if you could get into some of these hard to reach countries, like Trump did in the Middle East, where he bridged gaps and created trade.
He's still doing it. Morocco and Israel just normalized relations.
Yeah. Because he's a racist. But anyway, I digress. But if you could do that, think about what the possibilities are as far as, starting this and just getting a base on the moon and then popping over to Mars and colonizing that and mining it and all that, setting up a whole nother economy. It's just tremendous opportunity, for America, for the world.
Well, and you talk about the research and the push to do it, right? Like right now, all the research is centered on how to get into low Earth orbit. You get to low Earth orbit, that's the goal. That's just what everybody's aiming for now. So there isn't there's a little bit of research, but it's fucking guys that are bigger nerds than even me that just write on paper and make up ideas about how to make, faster than light travel or, chemical-less rockets, but there's no way to practice it. You can't do it's just we're all confined to the gravity well of Earth right now. Once right now the frontier is low Earth orbit, right? Like we can send shit further, but it's robots. It's not people. So when I say frontier, I mean where people can get. The frontier right now is low Earth orbit, which is really sad because the frontier used to be the moon. Nobody can get to the moon right now. No, there's nothing that can get us to the moon in existence right now. There's nothing that can get us there. We can't get people to the moon, period.
Yeah, and back, yeah.
Well, not back. You can't even get them there. Even getting a geosynchronous orbit is extraordinarily difficult.
Well, but, yeah, and that's
once we get into low Earth orbit and that's normalized, now the frontier becomes further out. So now all the research is going to shift from, it's like driving to work with your car, right? That used to be a fucking thing for the rich people. Only the rich people could drive to work. Everybody else walked or rode a fucking horse. Now, once you get low Earth orbit normalized, Now the frontier is Mars. Now the frontier is the outer planets or the inner planets even, which can be just as hard to get to. Which means all that research and all that effort shifts to that. And all these technologies that didn't exist or weren't even comprehensible today, technologies that aren't even comprehensible today, will now exist and be researched. So you talk to somebody, and it's crazy. You talk to somebody, even me being, I'm 36. I think I'm almost 36, 37. Oh, yeah, I'll be 37 here shortly. The how much has changed since I was a kid. Because I was born in that period of time where internet and computers weren't really a thing until I was like halfway into middle school. Elementary school, middle schools, when internet and computers. So technically I'm a millennial, but not really a millennial. It's that weird generation gap for millennials.
Where you had to learn it.
Where I still use the index cards in library. Yeah, you still had encyclopedias and index cards in fucking libraries instead of just Google, right? You know, the biggest search engine out there was fucking Yahoo, and Netscape was still a browser.
Yeah, Netscape, yeah.
But
it's been a while. Netscape. Yeah,
that technology changed even in the last 10 years. I mean, you think about 10 years ago when smartphones weren't really a thing. And now they're everywhere. Now you can't not have a smartphone.
Without one?
And
how do you live without one?
That small period of time and how much technology has changed. What's the next 10 years bring, dude? It's insane.
Yeah, and that is the beauty about getting away from government and people who have lobbyists, you know, pushing them one direction or another. You shelve this and develop that instead of this because it benefits my
state
better.
My
politics. Well, that looks really bad in the fucking
this company
in the paper, so therefore we're cutting funds or whatever.
And that's 100%. Like the F-22 is a perfect example of that, dude, and why it was such a horrible fucking mess getting built. Because the thing was built in like 30 states. I'm making that up. I don't know what it is. It's a lot. It's not built in one place. Like the flaps are built in fucking Illinois. The fucking nose cone's built in Idaho. The wings are built in Texas. You know, it's worse than the Airbus. Everything is built it, and then they shipped it together and built it in one place. And the only reason that was done is so each senator could have a little bit of fucking, I got jobs in my state through this bill. Yeah, it cost everybody, it made the fucking airplane twice as expensive, but good on you. You added a couple hundred jobs that Obama just fucking tanked when he canceled the program anyways.
Right. And now, I got into an argument with a liberal the other day about a month ago. And his point was, the Republicans and Democrats are basically the same thing. And I was like, no, they're not. And I gave this exact example to him. Like, it couldn't be more black and white. Under Obama, we canceled the manned space program. We didn't try to fix it. We didn't try to keep going. We canceled it and took that money and put it someplace else. And under Donald Trump, it came back. It came back as a different version of like a joint privatized government kind of joint venture type thing, but it's back. We're no longer relying on the fucking daggum. We're not relying on the Russians, to take us to the ISS or get us off the planet anymore. So it was like now here we are. And then you have SpaceX, 10 years later, doing this. It's like, this is so awesome without any constraints, without that nonsense, and I'm sure there are like the idea that we're using, the NASA launch pad, they are using the NASA, launch pad. So, I mean, there's, of course we're putting spy satellites in that, putting it up there. We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They're doing it with them. So it's like, of course that's going to be a thing. Hey, we're not going to let you launch your rocket, or hey, we're going to shoot it down if you don't put my spy satellite into orbit, kind of a thing. I guarantee that's happening, but it's not the same way. He's still developing. He's still moving forward. He's got this thing. Hey, we're going to Mars, and I'm sure whoever's president is going to be like, yeah, we want to put Marines on Mars. So you're going to make a military version of one of these, kind of a thing. But yeah, getting all that out of the way is just such a huge deal. To be able to go and just do it,
Well, and you see it in...
Think of the research.
It's not just in SpaceX.
Think of everything.
Yeah, and it's not just in SpaceX. And it's not that there's not a place for government in this, because we wouldn't have the space station. We wouldn't have the space station or the research that's come out of the space station without the government, right?
Right.
But...
Right. They're the only ones with the money to spend it on that.
The government is the one for people that don't care about risk, right? For projects that you don't care about risk, that there's no money to be made in research in space right now, right? There wasn't. It's getting to be where there is because of metamaterials and stuff they're discovering that they think they can only make in 0G, crazy metamaterials. And because of that, there's always a space for government an aspect of society pooling its resources together, right?
They're the only ones that can afford it.
Not because government. Well, it's not that they can't afford. I mean, yeah, they can afford the risk, right? Because if you put it in a concept of if you put it in a concept of a business, right? It's got to make money. It's got to generate revenue. Well, not many people, in fact, almost nobody except SpaceX was willing to put money into the rocket industry because everything worked. It was a government thing. The government dealt with all of it. It paid Lockheed Martin and Boeing and I can't remember who else, just big dollars, and that's all they had to do. There was no competition. It was just the government shelled out dollars, and that's where we ended up with, a space shuttle program that was broken. The space shuttle was amazing, but it lived longer than it was supposed to because it was a government program. It was doing missions it should have never have done. And on top of that, because of you had this stranglehold on it, you had no private industry. What it took was a guy like Elon Musk who didn't give a fuck, to be honest with you. He just didn't care and had enough money because he had made a bunch of money off of PayPal and everything else that he just threw a bunch of money and said, here we go. We're going to spend 10 years and not make a dime and just burn a hole in my wallet. But you know what? God damn it, we're going to make a reusable rocket, one that lands on a barge in the middle of the ocean after we launch it.
Right. And,
something that he was ridiculed for, by the way.
Of course.
I got to close my window. Hang on.
Yep.
You can talk, John.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not saying that the NASA or anything is bad. I mean, without them, and there's a ton of things that came out of their space exploration, developing like things like tinfoil and all kinds of random stuff that happened because of that. But when you think of programs
things like the pen that works in 0G.
When the Russians used a pencil,
that's all. Why not just bring a pencil? But, horrible Russian accent, but you get the idea.
There's other things too that the government does really well, and one of them is like national defense, interstate commerce. But places like you hear people give like places like DARPA a bad rep. No, the government's the only one that can, like you said, with the exception of people like Elon Musk, who are pretty damn rare. Spend the money to develop something random that can benefit other people. They're the ones with the money to go do that. And
the military spending
on our level that's non-weapons related, but like it's the government who invested in like the carpet that's made out of recycled pop bottles, and nobody else was going to spend that much money to outfit whatever building until to get the capital to make it affordable to you and me if they didn't do it. So in that respect, I respect the government, and I get it. But when you outside of that, when you start shelving ideas because one company who took
you're gonna put workers out of business in a factory in fucking Chicago.
Yeah.
Never mind the better of humankind. God forbid those guys can't relocate to a factory that's next to the ocean.
Right, but they're the ones paying union dues that got you elected. So therefore, this is what you're going to do. You're going to end up underneath home plate, in Fenway Stadium or something. I don't know. But
one of the things that's funny, it's an Iron Man quote, and I don't remember the whole quote, but it's when that reporter gives him a hard time outside about making weapons of war, and he talks about the IntelliCrops and this, that, and the other, and all of that military funding, baby. There is so much technology advancement that has only happened because the government was willing to spend the money on it. And it's not because they intended to invent something, but they had some kind of breakthrough in technology that somebody in private industry took that and then applied it somewhere else.
Right.
I mean, you think about aircraft, the most of the advancements in aircraft that were made in the middle of the century last century were made because the military was making fucking aircraft faster than you could make bolts.
Right.
And because
we're
of that,
spending the money to do it. They're spending the money to research.
And guys were risking their lives flying prototype aircraft into combat and reporting back, hey, this works. Hey, this doesn't work. All of that came out of government spending. And at the end of the day, it's this idea that I think, a lot of people, and some people even on the right and conservatives, say government's bad. And I don't think they really understand what they're saying. They mean that they don't like the government, the way the government is now. God damn, I keep hitting my mic. The government is now, right? The government as this omnipotent's not the right word. Basically, this superpower over your life controls everything is not good. But a government that the government in the sense of what it's supposed to be is, which is an agreement of all of us as a society, an ability to pool our resources to a greater cause.
Yeah.
When you work in a community level, that works with churches or community centers or however you want to talk about it. When we talk on a national level, when you're trying to build a fucking space program, the only thing that can do that is a government. Especially when it doesn't have to worry about making a profit. So
and back then, it was absolutely a space race between who's going to have superiority over that, the United States, or we're going to allow Soviet Union, CCCP to do it. So it was a matter of you will do this and you have to do it now. And it was a matter of national security. I mean, if you want to be America, you can't have the Russians, looking at you the way, with space
without us looking back at them kind of deal.
Mutual destruction or whatever.
Mad.
And like you said, I catch a lot of shit for it. My comparison is, I don't care what you look like as long as you're pointing your firearm at the same person I am. At the end of the day, put it in Marine Corps terms where it's, you're in a fighting hole. You don't care what the guy looks like, and they're like, oh, the only time we get together is when we're fighting each other. It's like, well,
I think when
moving forward in one.
When you're scrubbing the shitter stalls with a toothbrush, you don't really care what the guy next to you looks like either. Which was more common in the Marine Corps than actually fighting somebody. But
we'll put it in turn. I'll adjust. We'll make it as a kinder, gentler statement. Yeah. But no, that's essentially what you're saying. We lockstep and we move together as one. And in that respect, the government does a few things really, really good. National defense is one of them. Interstate commerce is another. They need to stay out of pretty much everything else. Just let the private industry handle it,
And like everything else, I guess, with what's going on right now, there's no balance. It's either black and white. There's no gray anymore. It's either I feel like there's
exists. It's mostly gray.
But in people's minds, they see it like that, John. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It's either all government and they control everything and make everybody's lives better, which we know is not right, or it's no government and everybody's life's better, which is not right either, because no government is what is anarchism, right? And that's all fucking Antifa. Antifa is no police, no government buildings. And part of me is like I don't know if you saw in DC some of the videos in DC, dude. There was a pro-Trump rally, and there was a bunch of Proud Boys there, and a bunch of Antifa people descended on it. And let's just say it didn't end well for the Antifa folks. There's a couple of them got the ever-living shit kicked out of them. Now, I don't support what the Proud Boys did, because they were doing shit like people had private property up. Like they had banners up on their houses for supporting Black Lives Matter or whatever. And some of the Proud Boys were ripping that shit down and lighting it on fire. And that's no different than grabbing somebody's fucking American flag. If you own an American flag and you want to burn it, I'm going to fucking stare at you very dirtily and not like you very much. But it's your property. You do what the fuck you want with it. I can't stop you from burning your flag you bought money on legally. And I'm not going to risk it. I'm a dad now. When I was 20, I probably would have jumped in the middle of it and beat the fuck out of him. But I'm not going to risk getting stabbed right now with a fucking family and stuff. There's perspective to that. But at the end of the day, I don't agree with Black Lives Matter. I don't agree with Antifa, but that doesn't give the Proud Boys the right to rip shit down off of houses and burn it, right? But at the end of the day, I was not sad to watch them beat the ever living fuck out of a couple of Antifa fucks. Because you know what? There is no Antifa that is good right now. There's nobody out there with Antifa that is running around, giving flowers to people. They're fucking throwing fire, like mortars, like not like little fireworks, not like an M80 or something into a fucking restaurant. They threw a fucking mortar, dude. The ones we were launching into the sky and making sure the kids were hiding behind cars when we shot them and shit. They're lighting those with their hand and throwing them into a fucking restaurant. Because they're Antifa, so, and then they're the kind of, that they shot that Trump supporter guy in fucking Seattle, or was it Seattle or Portland? One or the other, somewhere on the fucking sea level idiots. But Antifa doesn't do anything but destroy, right? And they won't do it unless they're in a mob.
Positive. So there's nothing
there was a bit of, and it's you want to talk about it as being a sin or a bad thing. It's bad to want to see somebody get hurt as a vengeance for it, but they needed it, man. Some of these fucking idiots are calling for, and we totally sidetracked off of this, like we said we weren't gonna do, but
Elon Musk has something to do with this.
the idea, I guess, that rounding it back to the government good, no government bad. That's the two sides you have fighting right now. Is this black and white? When the reality is, it's in the middle. You need government for some things. You need a safety net. You can not like it all you want. You can live in this retarded Ayn Rand. And don't get me wrong, I love Atlas Shrugged. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read, even though it's like, like this thick.
1,000 pages in 6-point font. Yeah.
But it's not reality, right? You can't live like that. You need a governmental system. You need safety nets. You need cooperation. You need things like the government to come together to build space nets. But on the other side of that, you can't have government strangling things and dictating what wins and loses.
Right. And that's the whole thing right there, that when they shelve something because somebody's paying them, So you touched on it here. I'll give you an example.
I mean, they're coming after that. They're coming after that right there, dude. I guarantee.
Oh yeah, they are. They're absolutely coming after that. But I was talking to someone close to me this morning, and they were saying, well, after the last pandemic, we had a recession, or the Great Depression, and I was like, okay, so yeah, that adds up. Timeline wise, that adds up. What's changed since then till now is the fact that we have, like you're talking about, a gray area. We were totally capitalist back then. The United States was a capitalist country. You couldn't argue otherwise. Now, for the last 80 years, you could say we're a mixed economy where we have 15-20% of government influence, spending, et cetera. And then the rest of it is private money. So what's the difference between that pandemic and this pandemic?
Right.
And afterwards, and there's a whole bunch, we can get into that. But I'm saying, like, our economy has changed. We saw something and fixed it. And that includes what you're talking about, things like welfare and Social Security and all that stuff was given birth back then, So yeah, we do as a country absolutely need that. And I say I'm a libertarian with the lowercase L because of just like that. Like, yeah, I don't want anybody telling me how to spend my money or who I could date or who I could sleep with or any of that shit.
Right.
I don't want any of that. I want freedom. I want laissez-faire. Whatever you do behind your closed doors is your own business. You want to smoke pot? Fine, as long as it doesn't affect me. However, you have to have an international footprint. Otherwise somebody will, and it might not be.
Otherwise somebody's gonna come take your shit. That's the thing it boils down to.
I want rockets. I want Neil Armstrong to go to the moon. I want all that.
I want a Navy
government to do it.
I want a Navy that has a single a single aircraft carrier group that's more powerful than the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th armies combined, and it's one of 11 or whatever how many carrier groups we have. That's what I want because.
The Germans, they were saying only in America can the Navy have its own army, which would be the Marines, right. and that army will have its own Air Force, which would be the Air Wing.
The Navy has more aircraft than the Air Force.
Yeah, and when I was reading today about what they called it, the Spy-6 radar, and this was developed by the government
on the Aegis cruisers.
Yes. And they were talking about this thing being 35 times more powerful. And what happened was they were given a threat, I would imagine by China, if I had to guess, of just being inundated by attacks. Okay, you've got missiles coming in, you've got drones coming in, from triple, and you got another ship over here also shooting at you. So they're like, how do we fix that? And they developed this super sensitive radar that can now track and say, okay, this missile's coming in, but it's not going to get here for another 3 minutes. So we'll shoot these targets down, then we'll come back over here and we'll worry about this one so it can discriminate.
Never mind you, anybody who ever serves on one of those ships can never have children again.
Like I told you.
I'm totally joking. I have no facts to that. It's just a joke. But
no, there's some anecdotal. We'll say there's a correlation.
All I remember was looking at the fucking Prowler aircraft, and they had a giant radiation symbol, and hearing. And they might have been old wives' tales, but about pilots being able to cook a fucking turkey, cooking a turkey in front of the thing when they turned the fucking jammerator on. I don't know if any of that's true, but
all that, and then the radio men all had daughters. It seemed like
they all have daughters.
So when my wife and I
God, maybe that explains
when
it.
Jennifer got pregnant, it was like.
But you didn't have weather radar on the CH-46. You didn't have weather radar on the CH-46. No, you didn't. Not like it. You don't have weather radar on that thing.
Anymore, yeah. No.
We actually have a radar dish in the front of the front of the C-130 has a big fucking radar dish in the front of it.
So I told her, I said, look, we're probably gonna have daughters. I was shocked shitless when it was a boy. I was like, what, really?
I can't really say that that's the case though, because I do know navigators with boys.
I don't
But
know. I'm just saying.
it's only
like there's like a correlation there.
well, it's
You're
only
exposed to this high frequency shit. And
it's only a
grow.
coincidence that all the boys look like the mailmen.
What was the meme?
Oren, Kate,
when
I'm completely joking. If you see this, I mean no ill will towards you guys.
What was the meme
Oren,
I read this morning?
Your kid looks exactly like Oren, and acts like him.
It shows a woman holding her baby, and it says, "Score!" When the baby comes out looking like your army husband and not the Marines that have been training on your army base.
Yikes!
But no, getting back to the SpaceX. Yeah, I think it's amazing. I double checked this morning. So he blew it up. What? Disintegrated the rocket. Had a RUD? Is that what you call it?
A RUD.
Unscheduled.
Rapid unscheduled disassembly.
And
I'm gonna start saying that for shit that breaks now. It's just a RUD.
RUD. I like it. But and now he's getting ready to get number 9 up and going. Within a matter of weeks is what I googled when it was.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't heard anything else on it. I saw it I think 2 days ago. Unfortunately, SN9 is tipped over in the high bay, which a high bay is a giant building. It's the big building that they build it in. I'll pull up a picture here, but something happened and SN9 actually tipped over and is against the wall. And last night they actually had a crane in there,
trying to fix it. Yeah,
trying to pick it up, but it doesn't look like it's there yet. So here's News Hub, but you can see here it's tipped over, which is really shitty because it's not like rocket ships are fucking bricks that are just, they're not. It's not like a rocket ship's a precision instrument or anything, right? Usually tipped over in a fucking bay is not a good idea. So hopefully they can figure it. Hopefully there was no damage to it. They can get it tipped back over and get it fixed, and it's not a big deal. But we're just going to have to wait and see.
Do that again. Right. I'm excited to see what that one's going to do. I didn't see any plan for what it's testing or any of that, what they were shooting for. So, but you can guarantee it's going to be higher than 41,000. Almost assume that.
We'll see. I don't know what you'll know what it is because like a couple of days before they do the launch, they start doing FAA clearances and clearing the airspace, and just like we did in the military when we had to do a MOA or anything, you had an airspace clearance that you could work in, but a working area. But if they go, I mean, you think about it, the thing went to 41,000 feet. There's not a lot of aircraft that fly off. Once you get to that level, you're pretty much clear to space.
Yeah, there's a handful of military stuff, and that's it. Yeah. So, but we were in the, us Hilo guys, we didn't have that problem. We were underneath the parent.
You could fly where you could. You could still fly where you breathed.
Yeah, we could get probably within a half mile so of the actual airport before we really needed to, unless we were coming in from a higher altitude, But yeah, we could get really, really close before we had to get clearance.
And one of the things that I guess might escape a lot of people about the SN8, the Starship, is the Raptor engine and what it represents for a spacecraft that has the power and the efficiency of what it does. Hey, John,
so it's called a full cycle.
Speakers down a little. Getting a little bit of feedback.
How's that? Say something.
I think we're good now.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so most of them are called an open cycle engine, and this is a full cycle engine, and it's just way more efficient. I kind of went back and looked at the parts and pieces. And
way more efficient. Like the only person that could get it more efficient is God himself, or Buddha, or the flying spaghetti monster, whoever you believe on. Like, you think about a fucking normal car engine that runs at 65 or 70, maybe 75% efficiency on a combustion engine because it loses all the heat. This thing runs at 99% efficiency. Like, the chemical energy that's available in the atoms, it uses 99% of it. And there's that quote. There's that quote from Elon Musk, and he says God himself might be able to get like another percentage out of this.
Which is amazing, and that's part of it too, getting all the bang for your buck, literally bang for your buck out of it. And then, by way of comparison to the old. Now, I didn't know this, but you had mentioned before this call, we were talking about it, and you had mentioned that, I don't know, maybe you take the floor. You were saying that that the Saturn V rocket motors were were handmade by
So
machinists. And...
so the parts were built like they were machined, right? Like what we would have considered machined in the 70s. They were built on big things, but in order to get them all to put together and run properly, they basically had these master machinists that put these things together. So the rockets on the Saturn V were the most powerful rockets up to date. And I think they might even be more powerful. I'd have to go look. The individual F1 rockets might be more powerful than the Raptor engines. But
I would imagine you're right because the payload's 55 tons more on the Saturn V.
Well, because I think the Saturn V only had 5 rockets on the bottom of it versus Starship, which is going to have 300. I don't remember what it is, but it's like a giant spiderweb of rockets. But
yeah, like 30 of them.
No one F1 motor was the same. They were all each one was basically hand built and hand machined to put together, and they would test and tweak and do and drill out little. There's a super cool video I'll have to find, and maybe I'll link it in the description if you're interested in this. But it talks about how they put these things together by master machinists, and they have the drawings, they have everything they could need to build these things. But because we don't have those skills of those guys, we probably wouldn't be able to reassemble an F1 engine today, because that skill set's lost. It's like the guys that used to build wagon wheels for wagons, right?
And gone. Yeah.
They're gone. Those generations of learning that trade are gone. And it's a sad, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because everything we build now is replaceable parts, right? A machine can cut 40 pieces of metal exactly the same to the 10th of a thousandth of a fucking inch, or whatever you can dial the tolerance into what you want it, but you can have that repeatability now, which they didn't have that back in the day. So they had to do this. Now that you have this repeatability, it changes how you design and how you build things. Yeah. So the Raptor engines are, I would say they're inherently more complex than the F1 engines were. The F1s were still incredibly complex. They were the most if you look at what they did, the Apollo program is amazing. And I've got some family history to it. My grandfather on my mother's side he helped design the Saturn V rocket. He was a rocket engineer, helped design that whole system. The Saturn V and what it represented and what it did was leaps and bounds of technology that would not have been available had JFK not pushed for it like he did. The rocket engines, everything, the guidance systems, all the stuff they put together for that. But the F1 rockets being put together the way they were by hand, and no one F1 being the exact same, and each Saturn V, like the Saturn V, let's see here, I spelled it wrong, but the Saturn V had 5 F1s on the bottom of it, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Am I thinking about it wrong?
No, that sounds right.
I got to find a picture of it. But yeah, there we go. There's a pretty good picture of it. So yeah, it had 5 F1s on the very bottom of the Saturn V rocket. The thrust that came out of those things, and they've got one of these in Huntsville, Alabama, that I was able to see as a kid and stand next to. When you see how fucking big this thing is, that all of this, 95% of this was just to get this little fucking capsule into space. Yeah. It is
in 3 stages, 3 calibrated motors.
And to date, we have not rebuilt a rocket that has the capabilities of the Saturn. And it's around cost, right? This thing was absurdly expensive to get into space. And that's why nobody's done it.
190 million, I think, something like that. 185
in 1960s dollars or 70s dollars, not in current dollars. And the fact that the engine that the Raptor engine is so advanced in what it does with its pre-burners and its pre-mixing and setting up everything to where you get all this efficiency out of it, it is amazing. And the fact that they're burning methane, methyl oxide or whatever it is,
methyl oxide,
super chilled. Changing the fact that now they refuel on demand, right? So previously they'd set the rocket up, they'd fill it up with fuel, and it would be all ready to go, and everything's safe and inert, and then the astronauts would climb on, right? The Falcon 9s and the Starships will be fueled. Everybody gets on and gets ready to go, and then they start fueling it because the stuff has to be super cooled. And you can't keep it super cooled because it densifies, right? Cool things densify. So that's how they squeeze as much fuel on this as they can by chilling it all the way down. So it's crazy because it's super cold in the tank, and then they got to light it on fire before it even so it's like it's burning, and it's burning before it even gets to the engine, and then it gets to the engine, and then it really burns, and that's how the whole Raptor system works.
It does it with one,
right?
Yeah, not
and
three. Yeah.
Right, and the fact that they're fueling with people on board is a huge leap. Like there was all these things because that was forbidden. That was like a no-no. You don't do that. That was against the rules to do with space flight. And Falcon 9 with SpaceX has now normalized that. That's normal. And now you're going to have SpaceX with the Starship maybe within the next 2 years. Like that's the idea. There's some super rich guy from either China or Japan who paid a bunch of money, and the first manned flight of Starship supposedly is going to be this guy and a bunch of artists and photographers. This guy's going to, I can just see the headlines now if this thing doesn't work out. But this super rich guy with a bunch of artists and photographers is going to go do a free return flight around the moon in the Starship, and they've paid some odd hundreds of millions of dollars for it. It's going to be kind of cool, but. That's going to be the first manned flight is artists. And that's not what the government would do. That's not how the government would see it. And Elon Musk is just happy somebody's paying him for a Starship that he doesn't have to fucking pay for himself.
Right. I'm trying to look it up. I know I can see his name. He's like I want to say he's a music guy.
Maybe.
He's Asian, I think. I remember I can see his face. Yakatsu Maezawa, however you say that.
You're going to get closer to me. You actually lived in Japan.
Yeah. Yusaku. I'm not going to even bother trying to pronounce his last name. A lot of letters. Starts with an M.
But he's already paid for the flight.
He's the first guy. Yeah. He's already bought the ticket. I wonder if it tells me how much it costs here.
So I guess kind of wrapping up the episode here, John, I just, it's super inspiring to me. I get tingly all over my body watching space. I still watch every SpaceX flight. Every single time Falcon 9 launches, like I don't even care what the payload is. I just watch to watch it take off, watch it kick off the second stage, and watch the first stage land, whether it's back at Cape Canaveral or out on a barge out in the middle of the Atlantic. And I still get a kick out of every time because, I mean, they're on like 70 or 78 or something successful landings now. They've got some of these rockets, these Falcon 9s that have been used 5-6 times. Like it's done 5 or 6 launches.
Right.
When 10 years ago, nothing. It wasn't even one reuse.
Again, it goes back to the difference between having a behemoth of government bureaucracy
red
versus
tape.
versus having like Elon was probably like, they're like probably like, hey Elon, normally you fuel and then you put the astronauts on, and they probably had a meeting and they were like, well, let's change that. Can we do it safely? Yeah, okay. Write up a report. Let's do it. It probably took them freaking half an hour to decide to do it in this order and change it. It didn't take months and years of paperwork and everybody playing CYA and all the rest of it.
And on top of that, like the fairings, right? So to build on what you're saying, the fairings, the actual nose cone pieces that open up and then the thing goes off, the fairings cost like $1 million a piece. So like $2 million total, like $1 million each side. The fairings split in half like a clamshell. And Elon's like, well, maybe we can recover those too. So they build this whole system around how these things, not only do they detach, but they have thrusters so that they re-enter properly and they're not in this like crazy tumble. So these fairings open up, they got computers and guidance systems and cameras, and they're thrusting and they come back into fucking the atmosphere, and then a fucking parachute opens up, and it's not like a big dummy, Army Ranger jump out of an airplane, land in a tree fucking parachute. It's one of these RAM parachutes that fucking steers itself with GPS, and it flies over the ocean, and there's a boat with a giant fucking net that looks like a catcher's mitt called Bodie McBoatface that catches this thing. And I guarantee it was just like the meeting you said. They're sitting in there going, well, what else could we recover maybe? Well, the fairings.
Cover this.
and
it's short-lived.
And they're just sitting there like, I can just see it on the whiteboard now. Well, if we have a boat and it's got these giant arms on it and it's got a net and the fairing has a parachute, we could catch it. And instead of going, you're fired, you're dumb, get out of here. The guy Elon Musk is like, fuck it, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen?
That, again, it goes back to leadership. Somewhere, you don't want to be micromanaged. You want to be there as a leader, just enough to steer the ship, to get your crew going where they want to go, and then stop something you don't like. Obviously, it's your money, but and so yeah, it goes back to just being a good leader.
If it wasn't for the fact that the guy was so weird and he named his kid after alphabet letters, he might write a good leadership book.
He's a little strange. He was actually, you mentioned Iron Man quote. He was actually in Iron Man, I think. Iron Man 2?
He was in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
He was hey Tony, I have an idea for an electric jet. That's the line when they're at the racetrack, and I think at Milan or whatever they were at. Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, Elon," or something like that. Yeah.
I had to watch it 3 or 4 times because that scene I was more focused on Scarlett Johansson in the little dress, but eventually I saw Elon Musk.
I didn't notice Scarlett Johansson or any part of her anatomy.
Well, but I think we'll wrap it up there. I still have a lot of work to do tonight, and
we'll wrap it up with Scarlett Johansson in a tight dress.
That's a good place to wrap it up.
All right, man. You have a good night.
Yeah, bud. You too.
See you. Bye.
Yeah.